Well, hello everybody. Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan, Living Life with Purity. And today's segment is segment number 91. And today's the day we start to put it all together. So it's been just less than one full week since the 2024 elections here in the United States. And we do have a new president-elect. Number 47 will be Donald J. Trump. Now, Donald Trump was prophesied to be the man who would bring God back to the United States of America. This was back in the 1980s when a fellow by the name of Tom Zimmer, who is also known as the Hermit of Loretto, made a prophecy back in the mid-1980s when he bought a brick with Donald J. Trump's name on it, and he had it put on the inside of the secret doors at the Vatican and St. Peter's. And these are the doors that are only open during a holy year. And what petitioners can do is they can buy bricks to line the insides of these doors. They used to be lined with large, heavy blocks to keep intruders out way back in the day when invasions were going on, Mongols and things like that were going on. They needed to buttress these things and support them against invasion. But now they use these bricks with petitions for prayer inscribed on them that are put inside the doors, and they stay inside these doors until the Pope declares another holy year. And holy years are not declared that often, maybe once every 20 years or thereabouts, possibly. I've got to go back and look into that. But it's a fairly uncommon situation, but it's part of the Catholic Church's rituals. And so what Tom Zimmer did was he bought a brick back the last time they had the doors open. They were letting people make donations and buying bricks and putting them in there. And he was told by the Blessed Mother to put a brick in there with the name Donald J. Trump on it, with the reasoning being that Donald J. Trump would be the man that would bring God back to the Americas. Now, in the 1980s, no one would have figured that because Donald Trump was like one of the most photographed playboys on the international jet set at that time. He was everywhere in New York City. You'd see him at Studio 54. He was never drinking or smoking or any of that stuff, but he was always out with the people and partying and having FaceTime with the media. But he was always out there. He was always making things happen. So no one would have thought that this guy would have anything to do with bringing God back. Well, right now with the situations that's happened here in this last year and the last several months especially, with the sniper attacks and the assassin's bullets just missing him and grazing his ear, these are definite signs of God's intention, I believe. Now, if anyone wants to disagree with that, they're more than welcome to. I'm used to it, and that's kind of how the world is going right now. So people are pairing off. They're taking their sides, and it's very, very evidentiary. It's very much happening. We have plenty of evidence of this going on right now. We can't deny it. Well, Tom Zimmer made his commitment with the brick back in the mid-1980s, putting that in there with Donald J. Trump's name on it, with the Blessed Mother saying that Donald Trump would be the man that would bring God back to America. Now, in the 1980s, probably a lot of people weren't saying that God had left America. But I think having lived through it, I could see that there was a lot of hedonistic tendencies. There was a lot of materialism. I think materialism went rampant in the 80s. It started in the 70s, but in the 80s, everyone had some cash after the Carter era was over with, and Reagan came in and prosperity started to reign again. People were upgrading their cars. They were upgrading television sets just as fast as they could. And we hadn't even gotten in really into computers at that point yet, but we were getting there. So Tom Zimmer, the Hermit of Loretto, makes his prediction, cast that in stone, literally, or in a brick, And so that was in there. And that came out, I think, in the early 2000s was when John Paul II opened the doors again. And it was discovered and held true. And people were like, well, what's this got to do with anything? Donald Trump, no way. Well, here we are. And so we can take it for what it is. We can say it's something that it wasn't, but I think the evidence is very clear on that. Now, in 2001, in May of 2001, I experienced a locution on Holy Family Hill. And I'd experienced locutions in the past, and they're very troubling when they do happen because you want to make sure that you're not imagining things, you're not composing things. And every time I've had a locution, it's been about something. The subject has been always about something that really wasn't part of my thinking, really wasn't part of my concern, but it was certainly a part of Our Lady's concerns at that time. And in 2001, when Father Hoevel and I were up on Holy Family Hill praying an evening rosary together, it was a beautiful evening, and so we decided to take our prayers out to Holy Family Hill and have just some quiet time out there ourselves. And at that time, there was no Holy Family statue out there at that time, so it really hadn't been consecrated as being Holy Family Hill at that point, because I hadn't put the statue up until August of that same year. But it was in May that Father Hoevel and I were out there, and I had this locution, but it was the only time when I've had locutions that somebody else experienced it at the same time. And Father Hoevel experienced hearing the words as well, exactly the same thing. And it was very moving. It was very concerning to Father Hoevel because he had never had these things happen to him before. But when it was over with, he looked at me with a great look of concern on his face and saying, is this what happens? I said, yes, it is. I said, why? What do you know about it? He says, well, I heard it. And that shocked me because I always thought this was something that was just me alone. But I think at this time, Father Hoevel was brought in on the call, so to speak, so that he would know it was something that was actually happening. And he didn't have to question it or have concern about it, that there was a spirit of holiness about it, and it wasn't me composing things, because these were not topics that I really had concern or any kind of thought or intelligence about. I hadn't studied it. It wasn't on my radar. But the message in 2001 went something like this. Our Lady told me, she says, there is going to be a war on this continent, a war like no other has ever been fought before in human history. And she said, the enemy is already on your soil, and they're entrenched in the government and the schools. Now that was pretty concerning. And she said, the children are the targets. She also said that there are over 20 nations rising up against the state of Israel to eliminate it. This is all quietly being done behind the scenes in private negotiations, but they're readying things to remove Israel and its existence from the face of the earth. And she says, once they do, they can eliminate my son's church and inevitably his presence in the hearts of all mankind. Now that is concerning. Now why would they have to get rid of Israel? Well, if you get rid of Israel, you get rid of the root. And if you want to kill anything, you always have to go after the root. It helps to make sure it never grows back. It never sees the light of day again. You can cut a tree down, but if you don't take the roots out, it will sprout again. In time, it will do it. If you give it enough nutrients and you just leave it alone, it'll grow again. And I think this is what she was talking about there, that the world, the elites or the power brokers want to eliminate Israel from the face of the earth, so you get this thinking out of the hearts and minds of men, women, children, people. So what has happened since 2001 that we can actually point to as evidence? Well, we know that the schools are indoctrinating and not educating the children like they used to. We have kids graduating high school, incapable of reading a third grade level book, much less try to give them like a Mark Twain or any other writing like that, a Huck Finn book or anything, basic child reading that I would have had back when I was, 8, 9 years old. They can't consume it. They can't understand it. They can't consume. They cannot process that information in these books. They're not able to do that. They can't write. I talk with a number of human resources people. I have one lives right across the street from me, and she's just appalled at the written portions of applications and how incongruent the word structure is. They're not able to put thoughts together in a word stream. They can talk about it, but they can't write it. This is a major breakdown. It's not everyone, but it's enough of them that it's a problem and it's growing. Okay, so we got the schools are indoctrinating, not educating. So we've got, incompetent people being pushed through the system and out the door. We also have individuals, families, and groups in our society have taken sides against each other. This identity politics, this identity thinking, this indoctrination is going on. That if you're thinking this way, then I can't have anything to do with you. You're the bad guy. You're an idiot. You're stupid. This is the wording that comes out, and you people gets used a lot. How has this come about? Well, it's come about because the government has weaponized its laws and regulations selectively against opposition groups or anyone who begs to say something in opposition to what the government regulations or the politicians may have to say about something. If you disagree, you go on this list over here and we'll take care of you in a different way. If you do agree, hop in line over here. Here's some Kool-Aid. Here's a shirt. Welcome to the club. So what we've had happen here is that we've had many liberals without God in their life and not any mention of God in their thinking. They've used name-calling and shaming to debase conservative Christians or anyone who thinks against them, doesn't agree with them. This is a strategy to dehumanize anyone who doesn't agree with them. And at the same stroke, to claim superiority both morally and intellectually over anyone who doesn't agree. Although them trying to establish a moral compass without God becomes a lie, and it becomes a personal, narcissistic type of thinking. And their intellectual thoughts are without sure merit because it's only one side of an equation. So you can't have an equilibrium anywhere in this. There's no opposition to think about it. So it's this is a true form of fascism, to where you shut down opposing thoughts or opinions. And they're really trying very hard. They did it for the last 3-4 years, when it was obvious that through testimony that they were doing things through the government and other authorities, NGOs and others, to shut down comment about what was going on. Don't ask us, what we're doing. Just be glad that we're doing it. You should be thankful. You don't understand these types of things. Well, it's going to get a lot worse. I was hoping that with this recent election and the overwhelming results all pointing in one direction, that America is looking for change. The world has been doing this too in their elections abroad over in Europe. The younger people have been turning out in greater numbers because they see that the world is being collapsed in on them. And they don't have an opportunity like their parents did. And they're the ones who are being told to finally that are going to have to pay for it all, because it's going to come off of their backs because of the debts that their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents have thrown upon them as a means of kicking things down the road in order to maintain a power position. Now, we saw this with one of our recent candidates here for president, Kamala Harris, trying to offer up $25,000 loans and other sorts of entitlements to people of special skin tones and things like that would qualify for these certain breaks and other things. And she thought she was going to win over a great majority of the voters with this idea of free money or grants, and that they could get into as a method of earning income to selling marijuana. This is one of the lowest levels of trying to challenge somebody to greatness, to take the lowest hanging fruit. This is such an insult to people. I don't understand why there's more outcry about this, to call these people when they are obviously trying to put people down and think so little of them. And this is very, very problematic. What's also very problematic to me was the concession speech, if that's what you want to call it, from Kamala Harris. It was anything but a concession speech. It was more of a call to action, a mobilization of the troops, telling people to fight even harder. We're not giving up, these types of things. I understand that part of it. But with the rhetoric that was put forward there then too, it was more about, we were right, they're still wrong, and we're going to still prove it to them, and we're going to make life hell for them. And a number of governors have already come out and said they're not going to work with this president. I think it's going to hurt their own states quite a bit. I think they'll all be shown the door by their voters in the next elections, because I think people are tired of this. But you still have people on the other side of this argument, the liberals, as I want to call them. They're not liberal, but they're living through lies, and they tell lies, and they won't listen an alternate discussion about things, because they say, no, that's all lies. We know better. We're smarter than you. You're just a bunch of stupid rubes, and we have to deal with you too. And this is where we're heading with this. So I think this is what Our Lady was talking about, that the enemy is already on our soil. There's problems in our schools, and this is why, as of late, she's been very strong on me to try to urge people to remove their children from the public school system. This is not something that should be looked at. This is something that should be done. We're not going to be able to change the school system, not in the near future. This is going to take a lot of effort to unwind something that's been going on for over 120 years thereabouts. We got a real growing pain to go through here. We'll get through it, but only if we keep God in our hearts, and purity is part of our intention. And this is where our talk about purity then comes in today, is that we have to take into consideration all the things I've talked about. You have to know who you are, and you have to be strong in that. You have to be able to certify that you know who you are and this is what you stand for. You can't let the media and other people in your family and things like that who want you to give up your position and just walk away from it because they say that they have the superior arguments. your arguments are correct. It's the reason that God is working this way. It all started back in the 80s with the Hermit of Loretto. It hasn't changed. God still has a plan. We just have to not screw it up. And we screw it up by getting selfish and trying to be a little greedy in our own designs. So let's make sure we know who we are, be strong in that regard. Don't let the media and your friends or family or people who are opposed to your thinking, your conservative views, sway you. You're in the right path. Stay there. You need to know what words mean. Don't let them change the meaning of words on you. This is not something you can allow to happen, because this is a tactic that they will use to try to change the meaning of things. Say, oh, no, you got it all wrong. No. They got it all wrong. And so this is where the fight is going to be. And it doesn't need to be a fight if you just stay strong and stay disciplined. So it's going to be much easier this way. Don't get into the fighting diatribes, the fighting words that they're going to want to throw at you. The name calling is going to get more and more severe. The disdain, the eye rolls, the assorted attacks you'll find in the stores and in the public areas, it's still going to exist. And as time goes on and we get closer to the actual swearing in on January the 20th, the tension's going to get worse. So the holidays are going to be pretty bad if you got families that float on the border, so to speak, of these things. They're going to be very selective about where they go for the holidays, and that's okay. Sometimes you just need a break, and that's okay. I've had it happen in my family. Had it happen just at church the other day. I'm a little blown away by this that's going on too. I went to Catholic Mass at a different parish that I'm not used to going to. Just been shifting around and stopping in places that might be handy. And I stopped into a parish. It was, some miles away from me here, but it was handy, so I figured I'd stop in and see how they did their Saturday evening Mass for the Sunday obligation. And I went in there, and I was taking part in the Mass. I was sitting kind of in the middle. It was about maybe 100 people in there. It was a fairly well-attended Mass. And when it came to like the consecration prayers, everyone was sitting and not kneeling. And I thought to myself, well, this is odd, and I'm still kneeling, and they're all sitting. And I thought to myself, what the heck happened here? Did I end up going to a different church? What is this here? But they were getting rid of the kneeling and doing more. It was just sitting and standing, and I thought this is new to me. And I guess this is kind of going on around different parishes around the country right now, a new way of doing things. Very uncomfortable and very concerning to me. Well, as I was leaving Mass, the celebrant was greeting people at the door and things like that, and the typical handshake and, see you next Sunday type of thing. And the priest looked at me and says, you were a little distracting. And I said, what do you mean I was a little distracting? He says, well, with your kneeling. He says, we don't kneel here. We're eliminating that. And I said, well, are you eliminating the true presence in the Eucharist too? And he goes, well, of course not. I said, well, I wouldn't know that from what I just went through. He was not really happy with me. And I just smiled knowingly and I walked away. And this was my feelings on it, but I've been looking into it, and other people have been telling me that they got this going on in their parishes too, and they're not comfortable with it. So if you're not comfortable with it, you need to say something, because otherwise these guys are going to be doing this then too, and then all of a sudden you got this slippery slope, and then all of a sudden nobody has any more remaining regard for the true presence in the Eucharist. And that's going to be the next step. And that's all part of this going back to the elimination of Israel and trying to cut to the foundational roots of your faith and what it is you truly believe. So you got to know who you are, and this goes with what you believe, how you practice that belief, and what's going to matter to you. So you have to stand up for these things. A lot to talk about. I can't wait to get Alex back in here. I want to pick his brain a little bit about this, and maybe we'll have some more things to talk about. But there's lots of things are coming about right now, so be careful. Be cautious about how you go about your discussions with friends and family these days. But you're not wrong, and so you have to stand tall in that regard and keep your purity at heart. In the meantime, I love you, and I'll be back.